Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat
so
Shalom.
Nice to have you all with us this evening, both in person and online. And we are going to go ahead and get started with a special melody tonight. Ben Marins, our past president and wonderful tenor in the choir, is going to do a little melody for us, a Sabbath prayer.
Good Shabbos.
Good Shabbos.
May the Lord protect and defend you. May God always shield you from shame. And may you come to be in Yisrael a shining name. May you be like Ruth and like Esther. May you be deserving of praise. Strengthen them, O Lord, and keep them from the stranger's way. May God bless you and grant you long life. May the Lord fulfill our Sabbath prayer for you. May God keep you and shield you from strife. May God in God's wisdom always care for you. May the Lord protect and defend you. May the Lord protect and defend you. And may God always shield you from shame. Favor us, O Lord, with happiness and peace, and hear our Sabbath prayer. Amen. 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 Lord, protect and defend you. Amen. 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 Amen.
Amen.
Good Shabbos.
Good Shabbos. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you for that beautiful melody for Shabbat. And how beautiful is Shabbat, our day of rest. We'll go ahead and start with Ma Yafeh Hayom on page 1.
Shabbat, Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. Maya Hayom, Shabbat Shalom, Maya Hayom, Shabbat Shalom.
And on page 3, we welcome in the Sabbath bride, the beauty and splendor of Shabbat with Lecha Dodi.
La 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 Lecha Dodi, la 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 Nigrat Kala, la 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 Penei Shabbat, Penei Shabbat Nekabel, la 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 Lecha Dodi, la 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 Nigrat Kala, la 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 Penei Shabbat, Penei Shabbat Nekabela. Shamod v'zachor v'dibur echad Hishmianu el hamyuchad Adonai echad U'shemo echad L'shem u'tiferet Velitila la 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 Lecha Dodi la 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 Nigrat Kala la 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 Penei Shabbat Nekabela Likrat Shabbat Lechu v'nelcha Ki mekor habracha Merosh mikedem nesucha Sof ma'aseh b'machshava techila La 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 Lecha Dodi la 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 Nigrat Kala la 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 Penei Shabbat Nekabela Hitoreri Kiva orech Kumi ori Uri Shedaberi Kevod Adonai Alayich nigla La 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 Lecha Dodi la 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 Nigrat Kala la 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 Penei Shabbat Nekabela Boi v'shalom Ateret ba'ala Gam b'simcha Uvetzola Toch emunei Am segula Boi chala La 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 Lecha Dodi la 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 Nigrat Kala la 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 Penei Shabbat Shabbat nekabela.
We'll rise and turn to page 6 for the Baruch Hu, our call to worship.
Baruch Hu et Adonai hamevorach. Baruch Adonai hamevorach leolam va'ed.
And at the top of page 7, beloved are you, eternal God, by whose design the evening falls, by whose command dimensions open up and eons pass away and stars spin in their orbits. You set the rhythms of day and night, the alteration of light and darkness. Sing your creating world. In rising sun and in spreading dusk, creator of all, you are made manifest, eternal, everlasting God. May we always be aware of your dominion. Beloved are you, Adonai, for this hour of nightfall.
Ahavat olam, Beit Yisrael, Amcha ahavta, Amcha ahavta. Torah u'mitzvot, chukim u'mishpatim, otanu limadeta, otanu limadeta. Al kein Adonai Eloheinu v'shofbeinu uvkumeinu nasiach bechukecha v'nismach b'divrei toratecha u'mitzvotecha le'olam va'ed ki hem chayenu ve'orech yameinu uvahem nege yomam v'layla ve'ahavatcha al tasir mimenu le'olamim. Baruch atah Adonai, ohev amo Yisrael. Ohev amo Yisrael.
And the watchword of our faith, the Shema, on page 8.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod
seated, we'll continue with the Ve'ahavta on page 9.
ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה, אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
At the top of page 10, Emet, there is no place where you are not. Even in the wilderness, there is your word. Emet, that pen stroke of lightning, white fire, black flame, stir the soul's passion, guide our sacred way. True and enduring is the Torah. Your truth for us is certain and established now and forevermore. Like Moses, Miriam, and all Israel, we sing out and rejoice.
מי כמוך פעילים אדוני, מי כמוך נהדר בקודש, נורא תהילות אוסף אלה, נורא תהילות אוסף אלה. מלכותך ראו בניך, בוקע ים לפני משה ומרים. זה אלי אנו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ונאמר כיפד אדוני את יעקב, וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל.
And on page 11, at the bottom, may these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day. And may this day fulfill its promise. And we'll continue with Vashamru at the top of 12.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל, אותי לעולם, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם, כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם, וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם.
We've reached the high point of our service, Tefillah, and we'll stand together at the middle of page 12.
As we've been doing for the last few Friday nights in Elul, a little bit of teaching, a little bit of, perhaps for some, refreshing your memory of the sound of the Amidah, the sound of Tefillah over the High Holy Days, which we've been introducing during these weeks of Elul. And I know all of you have been on the website learning and listening so we can all pray together. Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi yagi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avoteinu ve'imoteinu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor ve'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Ve'konei hakol, Ve'zocher chasdei avot ve'imahot, Umevi geula livnei v'neihem, Lema'an shemo be'ahava, Melech ozer Umoshia umagen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham ve'Ezrat Sarah. Amen. Atah gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechaye hakol ata Rav lehoshia, Mechalkel chaim bechesed, Mechaye hakol berachamim rabim, Somech noflim berofei cholim,
ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי הכל. Amen.
You are holy, your name is holy, and those who strive to be holy declare your glory day by day. We praise you, Eternal One, the Holy God. And we'll continue with the reading at the top of page 15 together. O God of Israel's past, O God of this day, God of all flesh, creator of all life, we praise you, the Most High, for the gift of life. We give thanks, O source of good, that life endures. Eternal and infinite one, help us to use our life for blessing, to live by your law, to do your will, to walk in your way with a whole heart. We thank you, eternal God, for the blessing of life. We'll continue with Shalom Rav on the bottom of the page. Please be seated.
Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki atahu melech adon lechol hashalom. Ki atahu melech adon lechol hashalom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. V'tov be'einecha levarech et Amcha Yisrael b'chol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam. Baruch atah Adonai hamavarech et amo Yisrael bashalom.
Our thoughts turn to those in our community in need of healing of body, mind, and soul. We send them our love and prayers for a refuah shlema, a full healing. Our Congregation Shalom community is thinking of Shandol Bat Frida Malka, Shirley Graham, Laura Bublitz, Keturah Bublitz, Ari Bublitz, Julie Borochoff, Margot Raz, Carol Dubin, Carrie Yudkovich, Otto Feller, Samsara Vizkaya, Sharon Rotman, Eliyahu Ben Maxinamella, Bob Radke, Lyle Rubel, Mark Cook, Moshe Ben Nechama, Karen Pearson, Jeanne Bass, Alan Turner, Judy Weingarten, Myron Dvorkin, Esther Cohen, Lauren Cheris, Matt Cheris, Lisa Furstad, Terry Finch, Vince Tomkowitz, Harav Ilana Miriam Bat Chava, Faye Levin, Sarah Rachel Bat Yochebed Alexander, David Feldner, Gili Golopal, Prue Precourt, Linda Berlin, Alan Elias, Tia Barrett, Wendy Salzberg, Kim Toplinsky, Stephen Plotkin, Kathy Peltz, Avram Ben Naftali, Neville Sender, Emma and Max, Doug Cruz, Nadiva Sara Bat Liba, Sharon Rothstein, Devora Bat Yehuda Malchus, Judith Naiman, Carol Rovner, David Goldstein, Marilyn Harmon, Mark Berlin, Chris St. Martin, Elaine Keller, and Ellen Futterman. I invite you to hold the names that you're thinking of in your hearts as well as we turn to Misha Berach on page 17.
Of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say,
We'll take a moment now for silent prayer.
יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. ועל כל ישראל
Shabbat Shalom. In the year 1502, a man named Jacobo and his wife Esperanza came to live in the city of Tzvat, high on a mountain in the Holy Land of Israel. Jacobo and Esperanza had been born in Spain, but in 1492, Spain expelled all her Jews. Jacobo and Esperanza, then young and strong, traveled to Salonika in Greece, where they lived for several years. They had heard of a great rabbi, Isaac Luria, who was known as the Ari, who led the Jews of Tzvat, a community that believed deeply in Kabbalah, the mystical teachings. Rabbi Luria taught that God is hidden and mysterious, but can be seen in the actions of people who believe in God's creative power and want to work to repair the world. And so, in Salonika, Esperanza and Jacobo boarded a ship and sailed for the land of Israel. In Tzvat, they found a community of Jews who prayed with all their hearts, loved God and each other, but struggled to feed themselves. One Shabbat, the rabbi, an older man, taught the congregation that when the Holy Temple stood in Jerusalem, before it was destroyed, God was offered 12 loaves of bread just before Shabbat. Jacobo was a simple man, whose honesty, integrity, and kindness were greater than his learning. He didn't understand all of what the rabbi had said, but he did remember about the bread. And he went home to his wife, and he said to Esperanza, "Next Friday morning, let us bake 12 loaves of bread for Shabbat." The rabbi taught this morning that God loves challah for Shabbat. I will bring them to the synagogue and give them to God. Now, Esperanza was a wonderful baker, and Jacobo was filled with joy at the thought that he and his wife would be able to do this mitzvah for God. That week, they baked the finest 12 loaves that they had ever made. They kneaded the dough with love, expressing their awe of God and their love for their community through their efforts. When the loaves came out of the oven and had cooled, Jacobo carefully packed them in a burlap sack and hoisted them onto his shoulder and headed for the synagogue. When he arrived, he looked around to be certain that no one saw him, and he tiptoed to the holy ark. He whispered, he opened the ark doors and placed them inside and said, "God, I have brought you the challah that you love so much. My Esperanza and I made it just for you. Tomorrow, on Shabbat morning, when they open the ark to take out the Torah, I'm going to look and see if they're there. If they're gone, every crumb, we will know that you like our gift." With that, Jacobo slid the curtain closed and shut the ark doors and tiptoed out of the synagogue. No sooner had he left than the shamus entered the room to sweep the floor and get the synagogue ready for Shabbat. When he spotted the holy ark, he put down his broom and walked to it. God, he prayed, I don't ask for much. I do this job out of love for you and the Holy Torah, but I'm not paid for my work, and my children are hungry. I need food for them. Even if the people of Tzfat can't afford to pay me, perhaps you can feed my children, God. It was then that the shamus noticed a wonderful smell coming out of the ark. And he opened it, and gasping, he exclaimed, My God, a miracle. Oh, thank you, God. Thank you so much. The shamus gathered the chalot and ran home to his wife, who was overjoyed to see the food for their children. They decided to eat 2 chalot that night before services, and 2 chalot the next morning for breakfast, and 2 after services, and they would save 1 loaf for each day of the week. Next week, we will see what happens, the shamus's wife told him, for her faith was strong. The next morning, the congregation gathered in the synagogue to celebrate Shabbat, and Jacobo waited eagerly for the ark to be opened. He grew more and more excited. Would the challah still be there? Would God have liked their gift? Would he have enjoyed the chalot? When Rabbi Luria opened the ark and Jacobo's prayer was answered, there wasn't a crumb there. And he said, Thank God, and he smiled at Esperanza. Esperanza and Jacobo had Havdalah to end Shabbat and made plans to bake chalot for God every week. The next Friday, they took out 12 beautiful chalot from the oven, wrapped them in the burlap, hoisted it on their shoulders, and took it to the synagogue. And lovingly, Jacobo placed these chalot into the ark and closed the ark doors and left. And a short time later, the shamus came to clean the synagogue. And there in the ark, he found his challah waiting for him, still warm from the oven. This scene repeated itself for 30 years. One Friday morning, as Jacobo was placing the challah in the ark as he had done every week for 3 decades, he felt a hand on his shoulder. He turned to see the rabbi, now a very old man. What are you doing? Shouted the rabbi. What do you mean by putting bread in the holy ark? I bring these chalot to God every week, Jacobo stammered. I've been doing this for 30 years. You have been bringing bread to God each week for 30 years? The rabbi asked in amazement. Whatever for? Because of what you taught, replied Jacobo, and he told him what he remembered of the rabbi's sermon about the loaves of bread in the holy temple in Jerusalem. You fool! God doesn't eat food like people. Ah, you are wise, said Jacobo, but you don't know everything. You see, every week God accepts our gift of challah. For 30 years, there hasn't been a crumb left in the ark on Shabbat morning. Now the rabbi was curious, so he said, Jacobo, let's hide in the back of the synagogue and see what happens to your chalot. So the 2 men hid behind the last row of benches and waited patiently. They didn't have to wait long. A few minutes later, the shamus entered the room and immediately went up to the ark. He opened the doors and he saw the chalot, and he said, God, for 30 years you have fed my family and sustained us in good times and bad. We give you thanks. The rabbi jumped up and screamed, You too are a fool. Do you think that God bakes bread and leaves the loaves in the ark? The shamus hung his head in shame and began sobbing. I don't get paid for cleaning the synagogue, Rabbi. I thought this was God's way of repaying me for my work. At just that moment, Rabbi Isaac Luria, the Ari, walked into the synagogue, and hearing the loud, angry voice of the rabbi and the sobbing of the shamus, asked what was happening. The shamus was sad because he knew there would no longer be loaves of challah in the ark. And Jacobo was sad because he and his wife had just wanted to do this simple act of kindness for God. The Rabbi, Luria, smiled and he turned to the rabbi. Rabbi, never since the destruction of the temple has God been more happy than each week when these two individuals are able to do this miracle. And it is because of your sermon. And then he looked at Jacobo and the shamus. You've been doing this for 30 years, and it will be difficult to continue now that you know each about the other. But I want you to do just that and keep doing it, and believe with perfect faith that if you, Jacobo, bring the loaves of challah directly to the shamus, God will be pleased, no less than before. For it is through acts of love and kindness that we serve God and repair the world. And you, the great Ari turned to the shamus, know that these chalot were baked by Jacobo and Esperanza, but they come from God too. Because as Jews, we are commanded to do the work of God in this world, feeding the hungry and helping our neighbors. And from that day on, Esperanza and Jacobo baked 12 loaves of bread and brought them over to the shamus's house, who gratefully accepted the loaves. And this Shabbat, may we too be like Jacobo and Esperanza and the shamus, engaged in God's work of repairing the world. Shabbat Shalom. So we'll go ahead and stand for Aleinu, and I'd like to call up Linda and Jeff Berlin to open the ark. Speaking of opening the ark, we'll go ahead and stand together for Aleinu on page 18.
למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד
You may be seated. As we turn our thoughts to those who are no longer with us, I cannot help but think of the terrorist attack in Kabul earlier this week. Innocent lives were lost, those of Afghans and American soldiers. We hold them in our hearts and pray for comfort and healing for their families. Our Congregation Shalom community remembers those who have died during the 30-day mourning period. Mark Ackerman from Orlando, Florida, Stella Burton, Faye Colberg, Adrian Kotradimos, Jordan Ray Peterson Hare, Dr. Leslie Sandlow, Bertrand Lubel Stolzer, Norman Shuminsky, Gerald Zupnik, and Joan Levine. In addition to these, our congregation remembers those whose yahrzeits are this week. Moishe Buchman, Donald Kane, Friedel Kahn, Ilse Kahn, Joel Kahn, Max Kahn, Mary Chattis, Ronald Dorfman, Rose Rosenthal Duckler, Bernard Edelstein, Theodore H. Esser, Hilmer Frank, Robert Ira Goldberg, Joseph Goldman, Pearl Gratch, Susan Holloway, Leah Himmelfarb, Carolyn Hoffman, Deborah Ullman Hoffman, Sally W. Kaplan, David Kaczynski, Fred Katz, Bruce E. Ketchpaw, Edith Kohler, Eugene Connick, Louis Crom, Jeanette Kurzer, Martin Lewin, Lita Lewis, Esther Medved, Marilyn Myers, Jacob Milhendler, Albert Paddock, Rebecca Pelton, Lou Pistoner, Jacob Pollock, Bernard Rossman, Benjamin Rubin, Edith Saletra, Max Schumo, Monroe Slavic, Richard M. Stone, Ernest Wallace, Ethel Weiss, Jan Willens, Esther Zesblatt, Annette Zlotkin. If there are names that should be added to this list or any names that should be pronounced differently than I did, please share those names as my eyes meet yours. And we think of those who no longer have anyone to say Kaddish for them. Our griefs and sympathies are mingled as we rise and turn to the words of Kaddish Yatom. It gadal v'it kadash shmei rabbah, ve'alma divra chirute v'amlich malchute, v'chayechon u'vyomechon u'chaye dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'bizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehe shmei rabbah mevorach le'elarit alemin kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, Damiran Be'alma V'imru Amen. Yehe Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya, V'chaim Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael V'imru Amen. Oseh Shalom B'imromav, Hu Ya'aseh Shalom, Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael V'imru Amen. Zichronam Livracha, may their memories be for a blessing, and together we say, Amen. You may be seated. And I'd like to call forward for our announcements one of our past presidents, Ben Marin.
Good Shabbos. So we welcome in Shabbat. We're small and mighty, but the idea is that we get to seed it. We're the 12 loaves tonight. Tomorrow you can continue to come and pray. We will have Torah study at 9 and services at 10. There'll be a bar mitzvah as well. We ask if you haven't registered for the holidays that you do so we can have an accurate count. We're trying to make sure we know how many people will be here so we know how many services that we have to have. If you have questions about this, please contact the office staff. They're more than willing to answer them for you. And again, we are asking people, other than when you're up here making announcements, to wear our masks and get vaccinated and make sure you are vaccinated. And if you have questions about COVID, I happen to be working for the health department, so I'm happy to answer them for you. On behalf of the congregation, to the congregation, we say good Shabbos.
Thank you for that. And we will go ahead with lighting of candles. And that prayer can be found, the blessing is on page 22. And for Kiddush, I'd like to call Ben Marin's back up. Should have had you stay up here. Sorry about that. Get some extra steps.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kadsho, v'acha uvratzonim kilanu, zikaron lamase bereishit. Hu yom tehila lemirag kodesh zecher siyod mitzrayim yivanu v'harta yotanu kidashta mikol hamim v'shabbat kadshecha v'hava uvratzon im kol tanu Baruch atah Mekadesh HaShabbat. Amen.
That it is. Thank you. All right. And we may have a seat. And now we are going to get to hear a little bit about Psalm 27, Achat Sha'alti, which is a tune that we do for the high holidays in the month of Elul, leading up to the high holidays. It is a psalm about introspection and helps us to look inward during that month of Elul.
Achat Sha'alti, One Thing I Ask, written by cantor Jordan Frenzel.
my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. From whom shall I be afraid? When immorality draws close to me to consume me, my adversaries, my enemies against me stumble and fall. If a camp encamps against me, my heart shall not fear. If war should rise against me, in this I can be clear. One thing I ask of the Lord I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to see the beauty of Adonai, to visit God's holy place. God will hide me in shelter on the day of calamity, in a tent in secrecy. On a rock God will raise me. Now I lift my head with my foes all around. I will offer in God's tent with a joyous sound. I will sing and chant praise to my God. Listen, O Lord, to my voice when I call. Give praise and answer me. One thing I ask of the Lord I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to see the beauty of Adonai, to visit God's holy place. For you, my heart says, seek my presence. O Lord, your presence I seek. Do not hide your face from me. Do not turn away with fury. You were my help. Don't cast me aside, and do not abandon me. God of my salvation, for my father and mother have left me, but the Lord will gather me. And one thing I ask of the Lord I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to see the beauty of Adonai, to visit God's holy place. Teach me, O Lord, in your way, and lead me in the straight path because of my opponents. Do not deliver me to the will of my enemies. Liars who breathe cruelty have risen against me. Had I not believed in seeing the good of the Lord in the land of the living, wait on the Lord, be strong and have courage, and hope for Adonai. One thing I ask of the Lord I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to see the beauty of Adonai, to visit God's holy place. one thing I ask.
That was a beautiful rendition of Achat Sha'alti. I love that version. And we'll go ahead and move to our closing song for Shabbat, Ki Eshmera Shabbat, for the joy and beauty of Shabbat, and it's on page 25.
Ki eshmera Shabbat el yishmereni. Ki eshmera Shabbat el yishmereni. Olti leolemead beino uveni. Olti leolemead beino uveni. Ki eshmera Shabbat el yishmereni. Ki eshmera Shabbat el yishmereni. Olti leolemead beino uveni. Olti leolemead beino uveni.
And to everyone here and everyone online, we wish Shabbat Shalom.
Yeah.